Just working on Roseanne, one of the things you mentioned is they made the staff wear numbers so they didn't have to memorize their names.
Tom and
Ah,
Roseanne, the first day of filming, they thought it would be funny because she was known to fire writers just right and left all the time. So that instead of having her to learn their names, there were 21 writers that season. They would just give us T-shirts and they could just point at you. Number 8, you're gone. Get in your car. So
how'd that make you feel?
well, I didn't know why. They were just like, Tom and Roseanne got us gifts for the first day. And I'm like, cool. And they said they're numbered T-shirts. And I'm like, oh my God, my birthday is October 13th for people that want to send me flowers and things. So I pushed people away to get in line to be the 13th person. And as we're walking, waiting to go, everyone learned what the reason was. And all the writers are getting really mad. And I'm like, going, oh, fuck, that's twisted. But I still have my T-shirt. I've worn it, I think, twice. I did wear it on CNN when I talked about the firing of Roseanne. And then I wore it. There was a special Roseanne reunion for the strike out in front of the old studio where we used to film that. And of course, Tom Arnold shows up and spills espresso all over the shirt when he hugs me. I was like, well,
On
that's
purpose
perfect.
or just
No, he just went to hug me and like he banged into me. He's a big guy. And I was
yeah.
like, well, if I'm going to get coffee on this, that he'd be the right person for that event. So it worked out perfectly. Stan Zimmerman, the sexiest man in America. No, I'm the writer of The Girls from Golden to Gilmore.
Yes, that is the voice of Stan Zimmerman, and you've tuned into another episode of Comedy History 101, where we school you in comedy. I am Harmon, hello, and we are thrilled to have Stan as our guest today on CH 101. Amongst his many esteemed accolades, Stan was a writer on The Golden Girls, Roseanne, Gilmore Girls, the feature film A Very Brady Sequel, and as you heard, he is the author of the new book, The Girls from Golden to Gilmore. And we will do a deep dive into all of the above. But before we jump into the episode, yes, of course, a few quick plugs. On Tuesday, October 1st, opening night at the Santa Cruz Comedy Festival, I'll be presenting my show, AI versus Human Roast Battle. Come out and see a human comedian take on a machine learning AI in a roast battle of tomorrow. And on October 6th, AI versus Human Roast Battle returns to New York City, 7 p.m. at the People's Improv Theater. And yes, the show is the gift that just keeps on giving. On October 8th, we will be at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. Yes, AI versus Human Roast Battle will be part of Pop Tech at this shitty venue called the Kennedy Center. And you can find out all about these show dates on my site, harmonleon.com, or on the social medias at harmonleon. Also, show Comedy History a little love. Give us some stars. Drop a few comments. Do so on iTunes, Spotify, or on our site, Comedy History 101, or on the social medias at Comedy History 101. Okay, is that it? All right. And now, without further ado,
You're stupid. Everybody's so stupid.
I'm trying to use the phone! Excuse me!
Comedy History 101.
Hello.
Stan, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Where are you at the current moment? I mean, not
I'm-
room-wise, but maybe like state or city.
The Hollywood Bowl is around that hill outside that window.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, so I'm in LA. Yeah, where are you?
I'm in Brooklyn, New York. And just irony's sake, you are the third person I've talked to in the last month that has worked on The Golden Girls.
Wow, who are the other people?
Jim Valley
Yes.
and Joel Thorne, the casting director.
Oh, Therm, yes.
So I think I'm going to change my podcast to Golden Girl Comedy History 101.
I think you need that. Although I have a little Gilmore thing today,
Very nice.
along with the Golden Girls mug. So it's covering all the girls for you.
Yes, indeed. And tell me a little bit more about your comedy history. Like growing up, what was the influences on your comedy genesis?
Two really big ones were laughing as a really young child and being introduced to the wild and brilliant brain of Lily Tomlin. And I just felt a kinship to her because we were both from Detroit. And I just became obsessed, and I was not shy about it. And when she came out with her first comedy album, I made my mom take me to J.L. Hudson's department store so I could buy it and she could sign it. And I still have it. And I got to show it to her years later when we were working together and became friends. The other one I would have to say is Norman Lear's comedies. I really connected with the way he told real stories to me, but yet they were really funny and they were socially conscious, and that was kind of a new form. There really wasn't much like that before that. I mean, obviously the Dick Van Dyke Show gave me the idea of what a comedy writer's room looked like, although it's nothing like that in real life. But I was like, oh, that seems fun to sit around and make people laugh all day and have your best friend be, this blonde girl with a little black bow in her hair.
And Maury Amsterdam.
And Maury Amsterdam.
As your best friend.
They were also funny. They were just always just really, but smart funny, not silly funny. There was a lot of those comedies, but and I enjoy them too. Like, Laughing was obviously political and silly. I love stuff like, I'll admit it, the Brady Bunch, and luckily got to work on the movie later, and Partridge Family and Love American Style and all those kind of shows. So, but I did focus on comedies. That's just how I saw the world. I found things to laugh at, even if they were, a lot of tough stuff going on in the world at that time.
Yeah. And how do you, what in your background, was the Golden Girls your very first big show that you worked on?
It wasn't the first job we got, but it was the first big one. Of course, when we got
you say you and your writing partner, Jim Berg.
Yes,
correct?
Jim Berg. Yes, we met at NYU and became friends and started writing together between classes and after-school jobs. And then I was sick of being poor in New York and living in a fifth-floor walk-up. And so I said, I have to get out of here. And luckily, he followed 3 months later. And even better, maybe 6 months after that, we landed a staff writing job on a ABC sitcom that didn't last very long, but it really opened the doors for us. And then our first big staff job was Golden Girls. But when we got the writing assignment, we had to go in and pitch ideas. It was just one script. And at that point, nobody knew what it was going to be. I mean, they had filmed the pilot, but the conventional wisdom at the time was, who's going to watch a show on Saturday night about 4 older women in Miami Beach? I mean, those were the days of Aaron Spelling shows and what they called T&A shows. I think you know what that stands for. And, it was like Three's Company and just very, beautiful women. And this was just smarter dialogue and character oriented. And, just the demos, they thought nobody would be interested in watching older characters. And obviously we proved them wrong because we're still talking about it and you keep interviewing people for your show.
And what from your background that, as a young man in Hollywood, felt you could write the voices of these older women actresses?
Well, that's the number one question I get,
Oh, man, I'm not even good at...
No, it's okay.
I'm just a hack.
You're a hack. Yeah, that's what I want to say. That's what Michael Patrick King said when he met me. He said, I thought I met every hack in Hollywood. I'm like,
yeah.
You're welcome. And we became fast friends. No, I mean, it's the obvious question. And that's why I wrote my book, The Girls from Golden to Gilmore, is really, that's how it started, to answer that question. And it's not something that came about when I was in Hollywood. I really give credit to my grandmother, my mother, my sister, and having 3 really smart, very vocal, honest, opinionated women in my life, and just watching and listening to them. And I learned early on, because I started acting lessons when I was 7, they taught me just to listen and watch people. And I've used that in my life, but also in my writing.
Yeah. So in your book, you say like one of your attributes was spying on people, sort of. You and your
Yeah,
partner.
I didn't call it spying, but if you want to characterize it as that, I would take it. It's just watching and observing. And yeah,
Yeah,
occasionally
just being an observer. Is what
you'll,
I meant.
be at a restaurant and you will spy on the people next to you, and then you'll when you hear them. But it was more fun when my writing partner Jim and I would look at people like across, a mall, and we would imagine what they were saying. We weren't listening to their dialogue. We made up their dialogue just by their interactions, and that was kind of like improv, I guess. We didn't really know what improv was, and it was just using our imaginations, and we just had this great chemistry and connection, and we saw things so similarly, but not exactly, but enough that it was just a great vibe, and it still is today. I mean, we just last year we wrote a Lifetime Christmas movie, Diva's Christmas, starring a few people you might know, like Donna Mills and Linda Gray and Morgan Fairchild and Nicolette Sheridan and Lonnie Anderson, just a few people.
I'm trying to use the phone!
Yeah. And what was it about you and your writing partner's chemistry that I'm more framing this for current NYU students that want to get into comedy writing? What was sort of those steps and advice you would give them?
Well, Jim was at University Without Walls. Do you know about that? Is that still in existence?
I'm not sure, but I think I vaguely know about it.
Yeah, so I used to make
And if
fun
I
of
don't, I'll just say I vaguely know about it, and then
Just say
I got
you
it
do,
all
yeah.
covered.
Yeah. I used to joke with him that it was basically his parents were paying NYU a lot of money, and he didn't really have to have any major or go to classes. He kind of made up his own major and then wrote a paper at the end of it. Whereas I went to be an actor. I had auditioned to get into NYU when I was only 17. And luckily I did get into it. So we came at it from different perspectives. He said he was studying journalism and writing, and I was not a writer. I didn't think I was a writer. I barely read books. So I thought of myself as just this wildly creative person and had tons of ideas, but I never thought I could put them into words because I didn't write, and I didn't love English class, and I didn't believe in the bullshit of putting a lot of adjectives in just to get a good grade. I was like, I'll show them. I don't care if I get a B minus. I'm not going to do what they say. And so we brought both of those perspectives to our partnership. And he taught me how to be a writer, and I taught him about character and arcs of for actors, like that actors will come to us and say, well, why am I saying this here? And giving it an honesty. And I think we've found some kind of magic because people keep hiring us decade after decade.
And what were some of those early pitch meetings like? Do you have any like?
They're all terrifying.
Yeah. Just maybe walk us through like.
Well, we don't love pitching, but
no one loves pitching.
no, and well, some people do, and I'm like, why? I've gotten calmer at it. I mean, we used to, get a stomachache doing it. It's like putting on a play, and then it's also like you feel like you're death of a salesman. You're like these old Jews coming in with like, here, selling this. But then I learned to just be yourself and to show your passion of why this project. And Jim and I, we figure out the pitch. We don't write anything down. We have like bullet points. And then we go over it so much that we both know all the points. And then we have this thing, because we've known each other so long, that one person will start a sentence and then gradually it'll go to the other person will start talking, and it goes back and forth like that. And people will watch us and go, that was the most interesting show. We're not buying your series, but we just want to watch you guys do that. Like, how do you do that? And it's just crazy that we just have that kind of chemistry. But we've managed to sell a lot of things along the way. And, but at first when we went into pitch, we were just babies. We had just gotten a staff job on a series, and CBS offered us a pilot deal, and we didn't know how to pitch at all. So we wrote everything down on index cards, and I literally read the index cards like blah, 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 like that, like probably very monotone. And we get done with the pitch, and the CBS executive looked at us and said, is there anything you want to do else you want to do? And I thought he meant as a career. And I was like, well, I'm working in movie theater. My grandfather thinks I should go into advertising. And they're like, no. Is there any other show you want to write for us? And we're like, oh, okay. And we came up with another show, and we did write that for CBS. And it's funny, a lot of the ideas that we pitched over the years were, when TV was a little more formulaic and standard, and people would just say to us, that can't be done. And we never have that kind of show, and we can't use voiceovers, and you can't do episodic. You had to have everything closed off after each episode. And we're like, but wouldn't that be interesting in a series if like you had like cliffhangers? Well, now they do it all the time.
Yes.
Almost every streaming show does that because it gets you to watch the next one. But when we pitched it, 20 more years ago, like people just thought we were out of our minds. And before Wonder Years, there weren't that many shows that had, or Gary Shandling had, they weren't like talking to the camera. There wasn't, we pitched shows that broke the fourth wall. We had the voice of a house talking about a family moving into it. I mean, just weird shit. We also had a deal at Lorimar for many years, and they acquired the rights to all of New Line films. Well, we were like, give us that library. And we looked at it, and one of our favorite movies was the original John Waters Hairspray before the musical. And we were like, oh, well, we have to do that. I mean, we just loved the movie with Ricky Lake. And so we pitched that and sold it as a TV series. It never got made. And Les Moonves, in his ultimate wisdom, he was like, Tracy Turnblad, that's too broad of a name. Like, we got to make it more middle America. So we had to like kind of like Turner and like crap like that. Like, that's bullshit. Whatever happened to him. Anyway, our tastes went towards, very eclectic. When we were at Lorimar, I remember seeing this young actress in a movie, Freaky Friday, and we're like, she should be in a TV show. And it was Lindsay Lohan. Yeah, we ended up writing a movie for her at Paramount, and that was a crazy adventure. And that's all in my book. But it's fun to
you tease the listeners.
I tease them. Yeah, it's a great.
She didn't just show up to the meeting, I think.
Oh no, and I just so happen to have the book with me.
Yeah.
And my little COVID command post here that was created so that you 5 steps from the bed and you're on camera, and saves a lot of time driving to meetings this way.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah,
like finding talent when you're on an overall deal and just saying, oh, I want to develop for somebody like that. I mean, I remember waking up one morning, late at night, and seeing Roseanne for the first time on The Tonight Show. And I was like, I came into work the next day and I was like to Jim's like, we've got to find this person. I think I've never heard people talk like that. Like, I think there's a TV show in her. And our agent didn't agree. But, that was cool, is like you can have these crazy ideas. And we ended up selling a lot of them.
And besides, your time working on Roseanne, what intrigued me is Russian Roseanne. Could you again, just for the listeners, could you
for
go
the
into
listeners,
that?
Sony had this idea that they would sell all their scripts to foreign countries and have them, you translate them and then you adapt them. So those are two very different things. So
Which isn't, now too far off, because like The Office has been in every language. Just
now they do, yeah. I mean, they do it. They do it more like we'll give them shows, but things like The Office and coming here was very rare. There was All in the Family came from England. Mm-hmm. The Office did, but very few shows would come here. So one of the first ones they did try in Russia was Everybody Loves Raymond, and there's a great documentary that Phil Rosenthal made.
Oh, I'd love to see that. What was it called? Everyone Loves Dmitri, or?
Yeah, it was called The Veronins. The Veronins? So what you do is you just have somebody translate word for word, and then somebody comes in, like an American, working with a Russian writer, because they didn't know anything about the sitcom format. They didn't have any sitcoms over there. Yeah, didn't have them. So Sony created this program where they brought Russians over, and Phil documented this, and that's what got him into making documentaries. And he had big fights with them because they were like, no, the characters have to look glamorous and have this fancy clothes. And he goes, no, but that's
not the show.
Regular people. And so I watched that and was terrified of it, and then heard all these crazy stories about Russia. And I prayed that I wouldn't have to go and do this job. But I'm so glad that nothing else came through here. And I went and I spent 2 months in the spring and 2 in the fall in 2015. And it was just this wild experience. And I lived right off of Red Square. I'm a runner, so I'd go jogging every morning through Red Square. I mean, it was crazy. I had a driver and a translator, and we made some pilot little presentations with actors for them. But I was in casting, and I had to hire a Russian director, and I'd go to casting. He goes, well, why would you want to go to casting? You don't, it's all in Russian. And I said, but it was so interesting that after an actor would leave the room, we both agreed on who we liked and who we didn't like. I could tell by their rhythm, even though they were speaking a different language. I obviously knew what the scene was, but I could just tell. So that was really interesting. I went over there and I said, I'll go to every comedy club you have, because that's how they found Roseanne, and just in a comedy.
Did they have comedy clubs then? Or
they said, no, we don't have comedy clubs here.
Where did Yakov Smirnoff work?
Yeah, I'm like, he came here and worked in Burbank.
No.
Yeah. I think those will grow over big there. I mean, just you serve alcohol and you tell jokes, but they just didn't have them there. So I went to like the Moscow Art Theater and saw a Russian production of Streetcar Named Desire. And that's where Stanislavski created the method acting at that theater. And those actors were like, we don't want to do TV. And I'm like, it's so different than here.
Yeah.
And they had a hard time understanding Roseanne and the format of it. They kept saying, why isn't it funnier? And I said, because it's like real life. There's some really funny things, and then you get into some heavy stuff. But it was such a great experience. I met great friends. I'm really, really glad I did it. At the same time, while I was over there, I helped them develop a Russian Mary Tyler Moore show.
Did that make it to the air? The Russian?
That didn't make it either. They could not understand the concept that a 29-year-old woman would say no to a marriage proposal before she turned 30. Because once you're 30, you're, off to pasture. They just didn't get it at all. And I'm going, but she wants to make it on her own. And I'm throwing my cap up into the air. And they're like, what are you talking about? It's just a different way of looking at life.
But did those shows air over there? Like, did you get it like on the black market with your blue jeans?
I don't know what they have on the black. They have a lot of things happening on the black market there. Like on the embargo, they weren't getting cheese for pizza, so they were very upset about that. But I was really amazed that there were great restaurants I found there. There's Moscow is very cosmopolitan.
Yeah, I mean the Russian tea room here in New York is.
Yeah,
that's an exemplary of the rest of the food in Russia.
Like really fine cuisine restaurants I found that were just really, very hip and cool, and it was just a different way of life. Like if I had something broken in my apartment, if you have like work people coming over, you negotiate what time to arrive. Yeah, they didn't have that. So I was told, just tell them what time. They're used to being told what to do by their government. So you don't say, well, I don't know, I'll be anywhere 10 and 12. You go, 10 o'clock, you be there. Like, okay. And it's just different.
And then also just working on Roseanne here in the States, one of the things you mentioned is they made the staff wear numbers so they didn't have to memorize their names.
Well, they didn't make us. They made T-shirts. Tom and Roseanne, the first day of filming, they thought it would be funny because she was known to fire writers just right and left all the time. So that instead of having her to learn their names, there were 21 writers that season, they would just give us T-shirts and they could just point at you, number 8, you're gone, get in your car. So
how'd that make you feel?
Well, I didn't know why. We're just like, Tom and Roseanne got us gifts for the first day. And I'm like, cool. And they said they're numbered T-shirts. And I'm like, oh my God, my birthday is October 13th for people that want to send me flowers and things. So I pushed people away to get in line to be the 13th person. And as we're waiting to go, everyone learned what the reason was. And all the writers are getting really mad. And I'm like going, oh, fuck, that's twisted, But I still have my T-shirt. I've worn it, I think, twice. I did wear it on CNN when I talked about the firing of Roseanne. You can Google that. And then I wore it. There was a special Roseanne reunion for the strike out in front of the old studio where we used to film that. And of course, Tom Arnold shows up and spills espresso all over the shirt when he hugs me. I was like, well, that's
on purpose
perfect.
Or just
No, he just went to hug me and he banged into me. He's a big guy. And I was like, well, if I'm going to get coffee on this, that he'd be the right person for that event. So it worked out perfectly.
And how did you deal with the chaotic nature that you mentioned in the book? such as, well, the star disappearing for 2 weeks.
She went off to get electric shock therapy, is what they told us, and we had to write her out of one episode. You know, it was always some crazy shit happening. And it was weird because the stories she was telling and her fighting the network to get our lesbian kiss episode on the air, I just really commend her and Tom for that. But then the work environment was just not pleasant. And they told us in the beginning, they said, look, we don't pat anybody on the back here. And because we wanted to work on the show, we're like, we don't need that. But you get in there, everybody needs to be patted on the back. Any job you have, I don't care where it is, want to be acknowledged for your hard work. And that's just good management that you would do that. You know, you would work harder if people say, like, good work. And so we actually learned, you know, what we would do differently if we ever got to run our own shows. And that's what we did.
Yeah. And so you mentioned the Dick Van Dyke Show and kind of, you know, that was like early influence of a writer's room. How much does a real writer's room differ? Like maybe walk us through Golden Girl writer's room and the process.
Well, Dick Van Dyke didn't have a big table in the middle. They just sat around couches. So we have a big table.
Maybe like a dartboard. I think.
Oh, you have dartboards? Well, there's that picture in the book. One day we were just so mad at Roseanne. All around the room were framed pictures of the cast, single pictures. We were so mad at her, somebody took down the picture and we just started throwing our lunch at it. Like it was getting out our aggression. And then we all posed for a Polaroid of it. And somehow I ended up with the Polaroid. So I'm the only one that has that evidence. And I did put it in the book. And some writers, when they saw me post it, they were like, oh my gosh, Roseanne's going to kill us. I'm like, you know, you're not working for Roseanne anymore. The PTSD is still so strong, and she had us all living in fear. There were 21 writers. Normally a staff would have maybe 10 or 11, and these days it's even less because everyone's trying to, you know, save money. But Tom and Roseanne would hire a lot of their stand-up comedy friends because they wanted to give them jobs and insurance.
Yeah, I'm originally from Minneapolis, so I know there's a lot of Minneapolis writers.
Yeah, so like Norm Macdonald, Laura Keitlinger, Pat Bullard, those were all stand-up comics. So they came to the show and they were extremely funny people and they were great to have in the room, but they didn't know about writing. They didn't know about character work. And so we kind of had to teach them, like, it's a funny joke, but unless the joke came from real character, it's not going to make sense to just put a joke in. But it was overwhelming and nerve-wracking because Jim and I, we kind of craft our jokes. And those people, they would just open their mouth and just like, you know, 10 funny lines would just come out naturally. So it was very intimidating to be in those rooms. And I found, and then we would break up into different smaller rooms. In some rooms, I felt really comfortable. In others, I just like clammed up. I was like, why can't I just feel comfortable to just say anything? And, you know, you have to be able to feel open and just say the stupidest things because you don't know if something...
No idea is a bad idea, the brainstorming session.
Yeah, and if you're sitting across from me and if I say something stupid, maybe, you know, that would spark something in Norm Macdonald to say something. You don't know, so you don't want to censor yourself. And I found in some rooms I just did that, and I didn't like myself for it, but, you know, I kept working to just open up more.
Was that the toughest writer's room by far, Roseanne? I mean, sort of outlined it, but...
They all were tough. I mean, Golden Girls was scary because... we were just staff writers. We were baby writers. They never made us, by they, I mean Paul Whittington.
And just clarify staff writer and baby writer, just the difference of
the
that.
Same thing. You're the first hung of the ladder.
Yeah,
your first gig. You don't get credit on the screen every week, whereas you see all these like consulting producers or story editors. You make money off of every time your name is on there, and staff writers you don't, even though you're in the room pitching jokes with everybody else. But the executive producers who were non-writing producers were in the room on Golden Girls because they knew that there was such importance to this show and they were going to be there to make sure everything was good. But they never made us feel welcome there. Like even on set, everybody had those directors' chairs with their names on the back and we were the only writers that didn't.
Yeah.
So, I mean, spend $25 and put our names on it, like just to make us feel better. So that was weird. Roseanne was intimidating because there were so many people. Yeah, I mean, they've all been like weird for some reason, staff jobs. It's just you're in this group with all these different people. And, you know, Gilmore Girls was a really, really small staff. And that was dysfunctional in its own way as well. But then you make friends for life with most of these shows. I still talk to them or do other projects with them. And I mean, it's so intense. It's so personal. You're there all day. You can be there from 9 a.m. till 2 or 3 in the morning, unless you finish early. Some shows, we had to go to the executive producer's house in the Valley. And that was, to me, that was not a well-run operation because there's no reason you should have to be there on weekends.
Yeah, and you have to drive to the Valley to boot.
Yes, and it's hot, and it's like you just want to hang out with a bunch of writers, like what was going on in your life. But I think if you manage your time well, you can get stuff done, and that was the benefit of being with a writing partner is that Jim liked to write and he liked to sit in the writer's room. And I would just be the one that would jump up and down. I'd come in the writer's room, I'd give my thoughts on things, and then I would pull like 2 or 3 people and we would do a story room. We would beat out stories. I loved the story and story structure, just the way my brain works. And right now I'm looking at a deer that's in my backyard. I just want you to know that.
There's deer in backyards of Hollywood?
There is a friggin' full deer I'm looking at. Oh my fucking God. I wish I had... Can I take a picture? Because no one's going to believe
Yeah, you got a deer in your backyard in Hollywood.
Unbelievable. Well, they fly over fences. That is crazy.
My mom has turkeys in her backyard, like wild turkeys. They're unbelievable. I know that's a big tangent, but yeah.
It is a big tangent. I mean, I've seen coyotes, but it looks like a baby deer, I guess.
Maybe escaped from some movie set.
Yeah, like
the deer wrangler let it go.
That is just wild. Because they do come, because I'm near the Hollywood Bowl, they do up in those hills, and somehow they must have jumped. I don't know. That's so weird.
Yeah, they had to go across a freeway.
Anyway, maybe that'll be my lunch.
You're stupid. Everybody's so stupid.
What was it like getting like that first big laugh from a live audience on some of your early sitcoms?
The one I really remember, because the first show we did was a single cam, so there was no audience. Obviously, table reads when people laugh at your lines, which you love. But that first time in a multicam show really wasn't the first time, but it was the big one was Golden Girls. And when you'd be there and you would be hearing an audience laugh, and then on one side of you, and then the other side there's like the 4 amazing actors. You're like, oh, I wrote that. Like that's me, and it's so thrilling. I mean, I talk a little bit about in the book about when I was an actor, and I would rewrite these horrible children's plays that I was in at a young age, and when I would change lines to make them funny, and people would laugh, that's when I knew that I had to be in this business. It was just this. Like you just feel it all through your body. It's like, wow, that's such a cool thing that something that came from your mind and your mouth elicits that sound from people. Like what makes people laugh? It's still kind of a mystery to me, but I have this sense of like, I think they're going to laugh at this.
Yeah. That's what you develop. It's all about connecting in some sort of way.
and style. Like I know what makes me laugh is not necessarily what makes other people laugh. Like I like the little silly, weird things. But I just know like how to place words in certain order that makes people laugh. Mm-hmm. And I kind of guarantee it now that I'm directing. I'm going like, if you say it like this, I know it's going to get a laugh. And a lot of times, like especially newer actors will be like, how do you know? I'm like, I've done it a long time. You just get it. You have this sense of like what tickles people. And it's so cool. And that's why when I direct plays, I usually come every night because I just love being in the back and hearing that roar of laughter.
And just a couple of last questions here. One early thing that I was trying to research more that it said you worked on your Wikipedia page it was called the George Burns Comedy Week.
Yeah,
which I did a dive into that, and my God, the talent on that is unbelievable. It was Steve Martin, Carl Gottlieb, from the team of The Jerk, and the episode I saw had like Eugene Levy on it, and
Yeah, so it was a comedy
Fred
anthology
Willard.
series. Yes, ours was Martin Mull, Tess Harper. So we had this. So we met Steve Martin's development executive, Marcia Smelling, and we really hit it off. And she goes, "Oh, we just sold the show to CBS. It's a half-hour anthology series. So come in and pitch to me and Steve a bunch of ideas." And it was, oh my God, we're pitching to Steve Martin. Of course, he doesn't crack a smile. He's not the wild and crazy guy. He's like a really serious person.
Yeah, he's art collector Steve Martin.
Yes, and he has beautiful art in his house.
Yeah.
I have been to his house. And so what they ended up buying was a show called The Smiths. And it was about, because of budget cuts and the witness protection program, they couldn't put 4 people in 4 different new environments. So they made them into a family to save money. So there were 4 different people that were in hiding, a mother, a father, and 2 younger people. And it ended up being very close to that Jennifer Aniston movie, right? Where they created, what was that called? I should know the name of that.
Friends?
Yeah, no, it was a feature film comedy with
Yeah.
the guy from SNL. Anyway, yeah, so they stole our idea. And but it was very exciting. And Phil Alden Robinson, who directed fucking Field of Dreams,
Yeah.
directed that. So, I mean, we had amazing talent involved.
Yeah, what was that, just like one season? Because I couldn't believe,
I think
researching
half
that.
a season. I think it was only maybe.
Was the problem it's like they put George Burns at the helm when you got all this other talent?
I mean, he was really old. He only did the little introductions.
Right.
He would just say, and here's the Smiths. And then it was completely separate. And that was the show. Why George Burns? I don't know. I mean, I think he had made those movies, Oh God, and was popular. But I mean, anthologies are hard to do anyway, because every week it's a different story. So you're not really getting to connect with, like on a series, you're like, oh, there's Roseanne's living room, or the 4 Golden Girls. We're coming back to spend time with them. Every week it's like, wait, who's in it? What is going on? So it's, there's not many anthology series that have worked over the years.
Yeah, and just lastly, how have you seen comedy change since the 80s? What are some of the big broad stroke changes?
I think, well, there's this whole controversy now that, The Bear is a comedy in the comedy category at Emmys. What constitutes what's a comedy? Back in the day, it was, silly stuff like Happy Days and Laverne and Shirley. And, then it, moved on to a lot of single cam comedies. And then you have this interesting blend of humor, yet it's not like but-bump jokes, when you have things like Sex and the City, which I loved, and Girls I loved, and, is Baby Reindeer a comedy? I don't know. So, Hacks is very funny, but sometimes it's really heavy and serious. So I think that, to me, it's exciting because it's more like real life, but I think you can have all. You can have those kind of shows, and you can also have some really fun half-hour multicams, which are much more oriented, where you have to have like a joke per page, or you have to have people coming into a scene on a joke and leaving the room with a joke, which is kind of an occupational hazard. So now in real life, whenever I leave a room, I leave with a joke, which can be really annoying to my friends. So when we sign off here, I'll have to do a joke to leave.
Comedy History 101.
Oh, so one other story that I just want to hear more about is your time with Andy Warhol.
Well, I was
And what was Studio 54 like in the day?
Oh my God.
Was it like All We Hear It was? Because I think it was like only a 3-year really run, 77 to maybe 80 or 81 was like its heyday.
It was everything you heard of and more. So I just felt like this out of place Midwestern Jewish nerd. Like I didn't belong there amongst the beautiful people. And I think in the beginning, like my friends from college at NYU would go, and the deer's eating one of my plants. Just want you to know. Now I know why that little tree is not doing so well. Anyway, I think I went one time and didn't get in because there was a door policy where there was a guy named Mark at the door, and he would either let you pass the gate or not.
Yep. Thus the song "Freak Out" by Neil Lofgren, I think.
Oh, really?
They couldn't get in one night. It was like, get the fuck out. But they changed it to "Freak Out."
And then you feel like a total loser, like you dressed up and you're just like, oh, I guess I'll just walk around the corner and get a slice of pizza. So I think that happened once. I'm like, I'm not going back there. And then I started dating, I guess it was my first boyfriend in college. And he came from a very wealthy Park Avenue family and was very good friends with this guy named Andy Warhol. I didn't know who Andy Warhol was. How would I know coming from a suburb of Detroit? And suddenly there I was at Studio 54. And one night, yes, had smoked some pot. And I look over and this girl is making camera like that to me. I'm like, what are you doing? And then she points behind me and there's this man with this white wig taking pictures of me. And I don't know if you get stoned, you look like you have in your lifetime. I'm just profiling you.
Yeah.
I felt like with each picture, he was taking a part of my soul. That's how stoned I was. Yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah, you suddenly turned Amish.
I think
like the same photo, like.
I told Andy Warhol to stop taking pictures of me. Like, how crazy is that? Yeah.
Don't make me famous for 15 minutes.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't want that. So I know somewhere in his, in Baltimore at his museum, there are pictures of me on that couch. And there are a few other incidents which are in the book of, getting to hang around with him or, getting a limo ride, his limo to Studio 54. And it was very exciting.
Who was rolling with his crew? Was it Basquiat and Keith Haring back in the day, or?
They were a little bit later. So we were, I guess, 78, 79. You just see like the regular people, Bianca Jagger and Halston and Truman Capote and, people like that.
Yeah.
Cibula was a photographer. I mean, I didn't know most of these people. So I didn't know who they were.
Well, you didn't know Andy Warhol, so that's
no Andy.
that's
so
top
starting
echelon.
there, and then I would read an interview magazine. I'm like, oh, that's who that is. Oh, Grace Jones. Oh, wow, I got to get her album, and I do have her album. So I'm really grateful that I had that experience and got to partake in a little bit of Studio 54.
And where can people find the book?
Online, Amazon, obviously, but just Google The Girls from Golden to Gilmore, and it's very easily gotten, and it's paperback, so it does fit into a little stocking, and it's great to bring on a plane to read because it's in little chapters, and I use a lot of my journal entries that I started keeping journaling at NYU, and so I kind of take pieces of the old journals and put them in how I felt back then, and I journaled all through all the TV shows, and then I can compare it to how I feel about those experiences now.
And where can people find out more about your upcoming shows?
Go to ZimmermanStan.com. I have a website. I'm very active on Instagram and some on Facebook. And so hit me up there. If you have any other questions, contact me there.
Very cool. Stan, so much great talking to you.
Yeah, thank you for having me on your show. Thank you.
All right, take care. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
And yes, indeed, that wraps up today's episode on Comedy History 101. And a couple of corrections. In the episode, I referred to Niels Lofgren as the creator of the song Freak Out, when in reality, it was Neil Rogers. Neil Rogers, not Lofgren. Also, when signing off with Stan, I said the phrase,
Stan, so much great talking to you.
And now I acknowledge that makes no sense. I think what I was doing was trying to combine two sentences into one sentence, and it came off as just one really awkward sentence. Also, in the episode, I mentioned that I have previously interviewed two other people who have worked on the TV show The Golden Girls. You can check out my episode with Jim Valerie, who was a writer on Golden Girls, and Joel Thorne, who was the casting director on The Golden Girls. Remember, as always, support our show and show it some love by giving us some stars on iTunes, Spotify, or dropping some comments on our site, comedyhistory101.com. Also, my tour dates. AI vs. Human Roast Battle, October 1st at the Santa Cruz Comedy Festival, October 6th at the People's Improv Theater in New York, and on October 8th at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. And you can find out all about these dates on my site, harmonleon.com, on the social medias at harmonleon, and more about Comedy History 101 at comedyhistory101.com. And until next time, bye-bye.
You stupid. Everybody so stupid.
Comedy History 101.